Great. So we're delighted to be joined. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Angus, Director of OutdoorArtsUK, and in the room is also my colleague David, who is our General Manager and has been with us for a couple of months. So this is first webinar, I guess, David, for you. Great. And we are joined by Andrew Loretto, who is the Director of Hat Fair in Winchester, which is the UK's longest running outdoor arts festival. And Andrew, you've been Director of that for 6 odd years now, is it?
Yeah, this is my, including the Phantom Festival of 2020. This is the 6th hat fair I've overseen.
Great, and you also direct quite a bit of work in your own right, and indeed one of the big shows in Hat Fair this year, you've worked with Fidget Feet on in a directing capacity. That's right, isn't it?
So I was dramaturg. So the show's been directed by Chantal McCormick, and I was dramaturg. It's kind of like the ultimate lockdown show. So during the height of lockdown, I was actually working on it remotely from here in my kitchen in Winchester, beamed into the aerial art centre in Limerick. So it was a complete back to front process, and then finally got to be with the company live at the Spree Festival last year with very limited audiences. So yeah, it's a delight to be bringing the show A Handful of Dreams to Hat Fair this year.
Great, looking forward to seeing it as well. We're also joined by Lorna Rees, who is Artistic Director of Gobbledegook Theatre. She's on the OAUK board, as it happens, and is an artist and, may I say, an activist as well at the same time. And her work, you were touring throughout COVID actually with Cloudscapes, weren't you? And how much have you been out thus far this year?
Well, we've done a fair bit, but we've done a new commission or a couple of completely new things already this year. So yeah, I've actually given myself a break, which I'm gonna in June. So I'll talk about that and why.
That's probably one of your top tips. Yeah. Give yourself a break. That's great. So look, what we're going to do is I'm going to first call on Andrew to talk to us a little bit about festival. And I'll just say, you know, the reason we asked Andrew and Lorna here is that they're people that we certainly are aware do their level best to introduce best practice when producing outdoor work. So in a good place with these guys. Then we'll ask Lorna, and then we'll share anything else and open up for questions, and then finish with our top tips on getting through the summer, if that's cool. So Andrew, I wonder if you could first of all kick off. You're going to talk a little bit as well. You said about the shifts over pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID. Post-COVID, I know that's not where we're at. You know what I mean. So I wonder, Andrew, can I hand over to you to talk a little bit about running a festival and how you look after artists at Winchester?
Yeah. So just starting a bit in terms of looking after artists. So as well as being director of Hat Fair, the festival, I'm also director of Playmakers. And that's one of the shifts that's happened actually over the last few years. You might find that people's roles have changed or organizations have changed. And so you may be familiar with the festival or a particular person with the festival, but they may be in a slightly different role or have different responsibilities because the arts organizations have been through changes over the last few years. So because we're very much engaged with our communities and our young people, my colleague Liam's here in the room as well, we also extend that duty of care to our artists, our production crew, as best we can. So in terms of looking after artists, I think from my point of view as a festival director, it's really important for me to be very present during the festival. I get surprised when I speak to artists, say, oh, we don't often meet the director of the festival. And I think, how is that possible? It's surprising how many times people say that, and I don't know if that is experience that people have found in the room. But we're a very small team that run Hat Fair, and so myself and Rose and our colleagues are very much at the coalface, and it's very important that we personally meet and greet the artists and stay in touch with them where possible during the festival. So I, if possible, I'm a bit of a floating butterfly during the weekend, just constantly talking to people, checking in. So I think that's one of the ways we look after the artists. It's just the personal touch, and everybody getting together in the green room and mingling and just seeing how they are. And when I'm out and about on the streets, I like to touch base with the artists after the shows, if possible, and say, how was it? How's it going? Just keeping that communication going through the weekend. I think the other thing is being available, making myself available for questions from the artists. Don't be an ivory tower. So things can come up during the weekend, and I would encourage artists. If if something's not quite working for you during a festival, do talk to the nearest available person. It may be your area manager on the production team or the director of the festival. If the venue's not quite working for you or something, we will try our level best to make it work for you. So do keep that communication going during the festival, because things can happen on the day where it's not quite what you anticipated, and so we'll try and make it work for you as best we can. I think one of the other ways we look after artists is just having a great production team. I try my hardest to kind of just generally in life work with fully signed up members of the human race, and people who are just good people, and certainly over the last few festivals, I think we've had a lovely production team who just really, really, really care about the work and want to make it work. And in terms of your area managers are key in terms of our equivalents at those festivals. So make sure you get to know them, introduce yourselves to them. They should be introducing themselves to you anyway, but make sure you get to know them. They're your number one ally. They can sort the shit out on the spot. They know what they're doing and hopefully make your life as easy as possible, but get to know them before you perform, okay? Make that introduction and it'll hopefully make life a lot easier. Couple of other tips I would just say in terms of helping us to help you. No matter how well you think you know a city or an area or a festival, do check out the venue in advance. Now, I know it's not always possible to do that live, but there are ways you can do it remotely. So, for example, this year with Dada Fest, I did a live video WhatsApp site visit. So I do that quite often with artists because they can then really see the detail. And for Dada's point of view, because they've got people, wheelchair users, etc., in the company, they needed to see the exact gradient, the surfaces they'd be moving on, etc. So don't be afraid to ask the festival to help you with either a live site visit or a virtual site visit, so that you can familiarize yourself with the venue way in advance, because obviously we want to try and get you in the right space and spot. Think about your wet and windy weather options. What can you tolerate? Different shows can tolerate different things. And again, if you're not sure, ask us. We sometimes it's really low tech solutions can help a show happen if the weather's not so great. Think about accessibility. Again, we've got shows this year at Hat Fair that have got built-in BSL or audio description. There's guides and resources available, including from OutdoorArtsUK and Without Walls and other things that are real practical tips and hints. So again, we can help each other with accessibility for shows. And equipment, again, helping us to help you. Don't assume, for example, the PA is going to be there. Make sure you've absolutely got your definitive list. Talk it through with us, what you're bringing and what you want from us. And don't be afraid to be blatant and clear about what you want from us. And we'll do our best, obviously, to agree that. But just don't assume equipment will be there on the day. We have to agree all of that in advance. So those are just some of the things in terms of supporting artists and helping us to help you. I have got some thoughts about shifts over the last few years, but I can come to that separately if you want.
That's great. That's really helpful. Andrew, you use a lot of volunteers at Hat Fair. Just that relationship between your visiting companies and volunteers, just quite specifically to how you do it. I wonder if you could just talk about the degree of responsibility you give to them, because it can often be, there can be those challenges where you turn up at quite a small festival and they say you've got a volunteer working with you and they've never done tech or they've never managed a show before. How do you cope with that?
Yeah, well, I would say also this is one of the slight shifts over the last few years. It's harder to recruit participants and volunteers at the moment nationally, so that is still a thing. So I would say if you are looking for, we've got some shows, for example, this year at Hat Fair that require some volunteer performers, or they require volunteer stewards to be with them for very particular reasons. I would say, again, work with us very closely because it just is slightly tougher at the moment to recruit those people. My colleague Liam knows that in the room. So, you may want 6, but actually we can get you 2. So, I think you need to build in flexibility. We will do our utmost to make that happen. And again, I think advanced communication. So if you're making a show that requires very particular direct participation. It's ideally, if you can do either virtually or in real life, do a bit of a webinar or a workshop with those participants. That's ideal, or get that information to us so we can do it by proxy. So preparation is really key, so that those participants, we can help you select the right people and make sure they're prepared and not coming at it completely cold. And then, a bit like your area managers, it's build in time before the show, so you get to meet them and talk through in person. Ideally do a bit of a walkthrough rehearsal if you can. That would be, yeah, the ideal thing. And certainly that's what we're doing with a few companies this year who have particular needs. The nature of volunteers is obviously, we're so grateful for their time, and we do various briefings with them covering everything, health and safety, lost children policy, etc. But we're also aware of our duty of care to our volunteers and our stewards, so we make sure they get food and drink, they're looked after, they're properly briefed, but we also know where their responsibility finishes and it gets handed over to us, so we're very clear about, if there's something they don't feel comfortable with, or it really isn't their responsibility, it goes to the production team, it comes back to me to deal with. And then we generally speaking, our volunteers are 18 plus, but we do try to have some under 18s, but they have to there's special arrangements to make sure they're looked after and supported. And I would just say, be patient with your volunteers. They are genuinely giving up their time. Some of them may not have been able to come to the full advanced briefings, so they're there on the day and they've had a briefing that morning, and they may be finding their way through things themselves. So again, if you can talk to your allocated volunteer in advance, do.
Right, that's really helpful. Actually, I went to an indoor show in the theatre, and it was interesting. I only clocked after I really realised that the steward didn't really have any possible answers for me, that they were a volunteer, and I felt a bit awful because I was treating them like they should know everything. It's quite interesting how you go as a punter to a volunteer and how you treat them differently if you think they're an employee. Different thing. Interesting too that there's a dearth in volunteer recruitment as well. I mean, I was more aware of it, I think, in paid roles. So that's cool. Great. Thanks, Andrew. We'll come back to you. Lorna. So I wonder, from as a self-producing artist who seems to forever be in a van, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you lead your company over the summer period doing outdoor work.
So we have 2 shows at the moment that are out or will be out in various guises over this summer. Ear Trumpet's got a cast, well, there's 6 of us on the road, 5 or 6 of us, and Geophonic's the same. And then there's also, we did a lot more cloudscapes in the last couple of years because it's socially distanceable, and Adam, my partner, is the person that runs the company with me, and we can just take that work out together. And I don't think I'd really realized the emotional labor until kind of doing these things, the emotional labor that you have to exert when you're running a company and self-producing and leading a team of people, because you kind of, I've got teenage boys, but you kind of also become mum to this group. And I think many of us in the room are also people that run small companies, and you don't have the opportunity to have a separate stage manager. I'm company stage manager, I'm wardrobe, I'm also in the show, I'm directing it, I drive the van. So it's just, and that is a lot of work, and there's no getting away with that. That is a huge amount of work and effort, especially if there's things like you're managing a build on site, or if anything goes wrong, as inevitably happens. My teams are amazing. I work with fantastic performers who are wonderful to work with, but there's always stuff that comes up, and particularly in the last few years, particularly with COVID, but also I don't know, company members might have a personal tragedy happen, or all these things, and I think I've been even more aware of that. And actually, that, of course, the show is really important, and that's income, and that's all those things, but actually it isn't as important as something really catastrophic happening in somebody's life. The show will happen, something will happen, but that's actually not the most important thing. Whereas I think maybe pre-COVID, I think for me, the show was everything. And I have slightly realigned my priorities. Just there's other things that are more important. It's not life and death. So I think that's useful to kind of keep in your mind. And things like that, our van broke down on the A34 last year, and it felt like the end of the universe in a way. But then also I more quickly put it into perspective last year, and I'm like, oh, actually, nobody was ill though, were they? And so I think there's definitely been a realignment of my priorities and my working practice, actually, because after some of those really big installs and those big events, I have tried, you know, most of us, again, if we're gigging all the time through our summers, we're just helter-skelter into work, right? And you don't stop, and you just like every possible gig you say yes to. Actually, if it's cloudscapes, that's fine. I can go out the next weekend or the next day. That's a really easy show for us to put out on the road. Actually, some of the other work, I'm like, I need a week off afterwards. It's too much. It's too much organization, and it's too much emotional work, actually, just kind of getting these things on the road. Too much energy. And if I do keep going out with that constantly, then I won't have the it won't be as good as I want it to be, because at the end of the day, I want it to be brilliant for my audiences. That's so important to me. So yeah, that's a really important thing to kind of note. And we've had I think some of this has come about because actually there's been this huge upsurge in not only Without Walls festivals that are new, they're new LA festivals, and other people that hadn't usually booked outdoor work. I just think there's a real explosion, in amazing explosion in other places booking stuff that weren't before, or being a bit more ambitious about the work they're booking. And that is fantastic. Like, we've had loads more, we're working a lot more with heritage partners. I know other colleagues have worked a lot more with like business improvement districts or heritage action zones and all these amazing other places. However, they are not used to presenting outdoor work or working with artists. And there is extra work that you're doing around that. And that's actually quite a lot of extra work sometimes. Oh, I'm just going to decline this phone call. I'm sorry. So it's actually quite a lot more work than working with an established festival, say Hack Fair. It's you know there's a pitch, there's going to be a production team, there's obvious people to talk to. There've been a few hiccups with places that then haven't really read the tech spec properly, and partly that's my, I could have really read through it with them. I'd had the conversation, and then suddenly it's a surprise when there's an overnight security cost, which is really clear in our tech spec and our tour pack and all those things. But when you're a local authority booker for something you've not done any outdoor work before necessarily, that's it. I don't know, I'm trying to do lots of radical empathy, and sometimes it just gets missed. So really, really spelling out your needs. I'd echo what Andrew says, it's really, really important. And then the other thing is I really want to make sure that the people that present the work, and particularly volunteers and stewards, also really buy into the work that we're making too. So again, like Andrew was saying, I have like quite a detailed briefing session with stewards or volunteers, usually on site, because I have done it once where we did like an online briefing, a Zoom thing, but then actually loads of people couldn't make it. I mean, this was last year, so it was COVID and people got struck down with things. So actually on site, it felt like I capture everybody. I bring my design book. I tell them about the process. I'll give them a real briefing about the art that we're making and why I make it, because then the buy-in's amazing. And we've had amazing feedback from festivals that's like, I really loved it now, and I really get what you're talking about. And they've had really productive conversations about what you're doing. And I think that's an amazing way to spread your work and your company's work too. So if you're not already programming that bit of time in when you're maybe getting made up and in costume, it's not always easy to do this, guys, but if you can, I think the buy into your work with a potentially new audience and a new bunch of people that are going to really advocate for you, like, oh, we'd love them back again, we like working with her, I think it's really worth doing. It's worth investing that time. Generally, I think outdoor arts generally, I know Jeremy Shine would say it's been getting later and later. Bookings have been getting later and later, later and later, last minute kind of things coming in throughout the summer still. But I would say we have had some incredibly tight deadlines this year already, and some incredibly last minute bookings that we've kind of grabbed. And they're a little bit hairy for everybody concerned. I mean, yeah, some really tight bookings. And you can feel a little bit underprepared. So I would just say that is definitely a trend. And there've been a few times we've said, this is counter to everything I've ever done before, but I've said no, because we just can't get that piece on the road. It's not fair to my company, my cast, their availability, their childcare arrangements. So there's a few things. Or I've said, but you could also have cloudscapes, because that's 2 of us if I'm free that weekend. So there's having a palette or a menu of work. Not everybody has the ability to do that.
I'll just say, often when that situation arises, people point them in the direction of us or Without Walls or Fool's Paradise, kind of going, okay, well, if we can't do it, see if somebody else knows what's free. It's often quite handy, and we are the central point for that, along with other organisations.
I think that's a really brilliant thing to say, Angus, and I do always kind of say, oh, but you could look for this, or again, it's about educating people a little bit about outdoor arts. And I know people look at my social media feed and kind of go, oh, that would be fun. Oh, maybe she could make something for this in 2 weeks' time. And I'm like, oh no, that took a little bit longer than that for a new commission, and be a little bit more money than that, and all of those things. But that's a process of education. But then you can, point them to brilliant organizations or other people. I think our sector is so collaborative, I think we raise each other up. That's why I'm such a passionate advocate for the outdoor arts, because I think it's an amazing sector to be in. And, quite often we share casts with each other, and we share all these things, and we share knowledge. And I think that's what makes us really unique and special. So I'm forever saying, oh, but have you looked at this company, or have you thought about this? And I think that's one of our brilliances as arts organisations in this line of work particularly. Sorry, that was a really long answer, Angus, to your lovely question about self-producing and balancing
Good
roles.
answer.
I'm not sure I'm not sure I always get it right, but I definitely think it's been a bit of a rethinking in my head about how to go about it a bit better. But it's been particularly exhausting, I think, sometimes, like corralling everybody together to make stuff happen.
Just kind of sort of, what's sort of on your, Lorna, as when you're visiting a festival, what are your expectations when you arrive? That aren't always met, I know, but what would you expect as?
Having somebody on site to meet you is really great. It's like having that, we have turned up, I'm sure most people have, and there's nobody there. And that is really hard, because you're then kind of, especially if you've got a tight deadline, or you've got to get in build or something like that, that can be really problematic. So having a working mobile phone with reception that's charged up, we definitely had a bit of a nightmare situation at one point. With Ear Trumpet, I do a site visit, so I kind of know where I'm going. I've already done an initial visit, but with Cloudscapes we don't. So knowing where we're setting up is also really important. It's, you want to know where the loos are. It's really basic stuff, but some of our pieces we're happy, really, really happy to change in the back of the van and do all that. That's very rough and ready, and that's where we come from in our background. But there's other pieces which are more, we do need a dressing room, and so all of that stuff just needs to be established, I'd say.
Well, I think when you say where are the loos, it's here's the loos which are also your dressing room, or here are the loos and here is your dressing room. It's that clarity. Or
in one case, which are open, because sometimes, so it's a real range at the moment of, people kind of in a museum suddenly going, oh yeah, we're going to book some arts and culture, but they don't know what goes into it. So keeping your temper, and I'm a pretty mild-tempered person, but there have been a few occasions where I've just thought, oh, this is outrageous, I've had to have a wander off. One thing we did recently, we had a situation where mid-performance, they were thinking about giving out headphones for the next show along mid-performance, which is a promenade. And I did have to have a little walk off and like radical empathy, and yeah, and kind of work that out. But I did, but it was not too bad because actually we worked it out and it was beautiful in the end. So just keeping calm and keeping nice and all of those things that I'm sure everybody does. It's fine to lose your temper and get cross in some situations because it makes things happen, but you might not ever be invited back, and that's not a great business model. So just reminding everybody that. I've also presented, I've programmed work in my past. I used to kind of program different festivals and things, so I know from my own personal experience what works. The other thing I wanted to say as well is social media profile. People are looking, stats are huge now for looking at social media post lockdown. Everyone's looking at it more, like we just got used to it so much. So I would say we are in the most amazing, imaginative visual art form in outdoor space with amazing people. And the thing that we're often in our work and we don't take photos of it or share those photos because it's another bit of work, but I would say it pays dividends and it's a really, really good idea. So if you can just embed that in your practice somehow, or get a kindly steward, if they seem trustworthy, hand them your phone and get some good images of what you're doing, just to say, I'm doing this now, and put it into your day plan. I think there's a real change there, and I think it's really worth doing. So I know OutdoorArtsUK, Angus is fantastic, and David is too, about documenting, saying you're here. I've just seen this piece of work, but I do think getting that in is paying off even more than it used to.
Also, Lorna, if the festival has an official photographer and you know they've photographed your show, talk to the festival about getting those images. So one of the things I absolutely made sure was in place with Hat Fair was we would share those images free of charge with the artist, and all we ask is you just credit the photographer at the festival. So, if you can get your hands on those, do.
It's such good practice, and it sells your work in a way, it's expensive, right, to get good photos, especially photos in action that aren't like pre-shots or something. Yeah, I know GDIF do that for us. We've just worked with Pavilion Dance, they've done the same for us. So yeah, it's such good practice from festivals.
I think also that's a good one on social media. I mean, a lot of people just do come to us and go, have you got this, so that we know it's covered, which is always good. But I find the thing of linking up the artists with the show is something that perhaps some of the more junior festivals don't get. Is they'll say, we've got comedy seagulls walking through town, but they won't credit the artist because it's not a kind of an active dismissal. It's just they're not quite aware that actually that's a company doing that the comedy seagulls do come with a social media tag and a company and some people that they can get involved with, which is healthy for them. But I mean, one of the big things that we always encourage for, even emerging festivals, is to credit the artists. It's surprising how that gets missed. I think less so, I'm pleased to say, us pioneering along with the artists.
But I think also it's I think the more established festivals are better at doing that. And actually, often venues, because again, there's more indoor venues programming outdoor work, but actually, I don't know, working hand in hand with the shopping centres, with the museum partners, those other places that are slightly more, the town councils, the parish councils, all of these people that are actually seeing the value in outdoor work, or have got little grants for things like, I don't know, Jubilee grants or whatever. Yeah, making sure that's in there, and asking nicely if that can happen. I mean,
I think also that's really handy for the public to know as well, that these are people who this is their job and this is what they do. Certainly, actually, around the Jubilee pageant, I had a lot of conversation where I was standing, just because everybody there could tell that I knew pretty much everybody in that parade, and people, which was kind of hilarious. But they were sort of saying, "Oh, these aren't just volunteers who do this at the weekends." Okay, no, this is people's jobs. This is what they do. These are makers, designers, directors, choreographers. It took quite an imaginative leap, literally, for like the 20 people around me to go, oh wow, it's not just volunteers. So it's a good one for the festivals to share. I'm sure Andrew would agree.
Absolutely. And also, if you can, the nature of outdoor arts, the public are going to be taking lots of photos and sharing them on social media. So if you can share your hashtag or handles or whatever is useful for you, on a sign or something at the end of the show, say if you are, ask your audience to use your hashtag as well.
Yeah, we do on some of our like signboards and things, we just have the hashtag for it. So, and I'm always kind of happy for a selfie and all of those things that, again, I think all of us do probably, but well, unless it's geophonic, in which case it's completely different performance sort of vernacular. So yeah, it's not always easy to get that right.
I think just echoing what Lorna was saying, actually, going back to the basics of the toilets and the dressing room and tea and coffee, it's so important. And I think that constant education, I've experienced that throughout my career, because I've, yes, I'm running Hat Fair, but even I still get, I get approaches from local authorities saying, oh, can you just, a bit like Lorna was saying, can you just magic something up in a couple of weeks? And then you kind of, I spend quite a lot of time, explaining to third parties about, okay, well, let's make sure we've got a tea and coffee space, we've got a quiet space, toilets, etc. And by the way, what's your budget to pay the artists, and etc. etc. So yeah, I think we're constantly sort of educating people, and they get it once you talk it through with them. It's just as Lorna was saying, they just aren't aware of those things, those very practical things. So yeah, important to make sure that's all in place.
Safety has been mentioned in the comments there by Pam, and in a particular point, but just I was doing some mentoring work in Great Yarmouth just a couple of weeks back, and we had a session on writing risk assessments and health and safety, and of course everybody slumps in their chair, and I'm a great advocate for a good risk assessment, because actually that becomes it's so much, it gives you that foundation as a company, but also as a festival, to do what you do, but with confidence. Just Andrew, in terms of what are your expectations in terms of receiving that kind of documentation, risk assessments, and or method statements, and or other certification from the company?
Yeah, well, we basically have a standard list of things that we request from the company. Now, clearly they're scalable depending on the nature of the show. So something like Fidget Feet coming over with a blooming great, aerial dance rig, that's going to be a much more extensive, set of documents, whereas someone doing a solo stand-up on a street, that's going to be a much simpler one. And the thing is, because we work with such a range of performers, one of the things about Hat Fair is, yes, we work with like nationally, internationally experienced performers, but equally we're working with students and people who are performing outdoors for the very first time. So, we, one of the pluses of us being combined with Playmakers, which is our year-round sort of developmental arm working with communities and emerging talent, is we can help people, we can mentor, we can talk people through, but equally we're also happy to support experienced artists, because it might be they've got questions about that particular show, they're not quite sure. So, again, I go back to having the right people in your freelance production team, who will be disposed to help the artists and advise and talk. So I would say, if anybody is don't suffer in silence. That's what I'd say. If you think, oh my God, I really don't know what to do with this, there are loads of people out there to help. And again, echoing Lorna, and I think we probably, one of the reasons why we're all in the outdoor arts world is that I find in this particular sector, people are very generous at sharing their knowledge, because we want it to work. We just want it to work. There is a genuine generosity for each other's work, and that genuine shared celebration, and that's why I love this sector. So people are really happy, I find, to share their knowledge. And when people contact me, because there's things I know, there's things I don't know, I'll do my best to put them in touch with the person who does know the stuff they want to find out. And it may be another artist who's done similar work, or a production manager, or whatever. So I would say, yeah, ask us again, talk to us if you're not sure about what to put together, have that dialogue.
Great. And Lorna, what do you send out?
Oh, just so we I've just done a slightly torturous method statement for a festival, which was like, oh that was, yeah, maybe not not the most pleasant document, but yeah, risk assessment is really detailed. But I suppose also just to remind everyone, and I know you'll know this, but it is a living document. And it's there to make the work happen, not to block things. But we had an incident with Geophonic a few weeks ago in Bournemouth. We hadn't performed it in a town centre situation, and it was in Bournemouth. It's my hometown. I know very well, and it can get quite leery. And on the Friday night, it was really tasty in town, and somebody came up and performed with us for a bit in a way that I felt fairly comfortable with. But I'm a live artist and performer, and I felt that I was fine. But I was suddenly very aware that my cast didn't feel as comfortable with that as I do. And that's where I was like, oh, this is actually an issue. So for the next night, the presenting team were fantastic, and they put on an extra security guard. Now, we will now have that in our risk assessment. We'll talk about that and talk of time of day, and like if there's football on or any of these different things. Actually, the next night football was on, Larry was on the street, so it was quite helpful, really. But I suddenly felt that duty of care to my cast that I don't feel for myself, because I think, oh, this is art, what's happening now, this is brilliant, you know. But I felt that they felt kind of quite sort of intimidated and scared by the
so you basically had a stage invasion.
We had a pitch invasion, and it's a promenade piece, and I love the interplay with my secondary audience and that work, but I was very aware of my audience. And I think certain town centres have got a little bit more Larry. Actually, it's quite interesting. Maybe it's the, you know, summer is always kind of a bit tasty anyway, certainly in Bournemouth, but it's there's been a bit of a change of people. So yeah, having a document that I update most times after I do a gig. Actually, I probably don't do that for Cardscapes actually, but yeah, it's useful. It's useful to think of it like that.
Sorry, Pam has very kindly shared to me, it'd be great, Pam, if you want to share that with the group, some interesting stuff from Kirklees Council, just in terms of sharing that kind of information. So do please pop that in the main chat. And indeed, you said you're improving the documentation, but it's lovely to have it at that early stage. Anything, that's lots covered. Thank you, guys. Is there anything anyone in the room would like to, just feel free to wave if you'd like to, a bit of a follow up on anything or something that we've missed, or something we could elaborate upon. I've done something silly with my view. There we are. Exit full screen. There we go. Let's put it. Now I can read everything.
I hadn't, just one more little point. Sorry, Angus.
Go, Lorna, please.
Just to say, if anyone is like us, we have a medium wheelbase Ford Transit van. It cost me £145 to fill it up the other day. Petrol is, diesel is, I mean, I make working about the environment. I feel guilty for having a transit van anyway. I cannot do my job without a van, or I'd have to do it completely differently and not tour anywhere. It's so expensive, and the rail fares have shot up, and we are, you know, we had contracts with festivals 3 years ago where we made an agreement about what the fuel costs would be. We're now fulfilling that gig. It's extraordinary, the cost of getting around the country, and we tour north quite a lot. So just please, because we've been a bit stung by it, but just factor in the increased cost of living, and you might want to choose to reflect that in per diems and things as well for your casting company, if there's any way you can.
I don't know whether, Andrew, how do you operate in terms of, do you charge mileage in terms of getting artists to the festival?
So we agree at the contract stage, we agree the total cost of travel with the artist. We cover their accommodation and food when they're here, so we don't do per diems because we feed people. But yeah, just to echo Lorna, this is one of the shifts, sadly, is costs have gone up across the board. So make sure you fully factor in all your own costs as well as your fees, so don't get stung. And the other thing just to bear in mind, again, a shift over the last couple of years, is for many festivals, including us, this is the first year we're actually in reality dealing with Brexit, because we haven't been able to bring international artists in the last couple of years. So we're finding our way with that. And there's things like, you know, again, going back to Fidget Feet, where, you know, you think, oh, great, they're Irish nationals. We're covered by the Common Travel Agreement. And then you go, oh, hang on, 2 of the company are from mainland Europe, etc. So we have to get certificates of sponsorship, and then, oh, we don't need a carnet for equipment, and we think, oh, actually we do. La, la, la. So there's things like that. So in terms of being a UK-based company performing at UK festivals, if you've got members of your team who are from, say, you know, Germany or Holland or wherever it might be, just allow time for all of that and make sure everything's covered, because it might be that the festival has to do a certificate of sponsorship for those individuals, which is what we're doing on a case-by-case basis for this year. So those are just some of the other shifts as well.
In terms of the travel thing also, I mean, I'm affected by it too, and doing that crazy thing where you realize that it's going to be cheaper to fly, and yet you're also trying to keep your carbon footprint down. It's a horrible negotiation to have to make in terms of budget versus the environment. Hey, that's just what's wrong with the world, isn't it? Anything else you'd like to add before we do our little top tips? Or anyone else going to throw in anything they'd like to ask? Adam, hi.
Hello. Just a quick question of how much you charge pence per mile for petrol now.
Yeah, what's the new mileage? Have you changed yours, Andrew, at all? And Lorna, do you do that too?
We had been doing 45 pence a mile, and now that's just covering fuel rather than like the cost of running a vehicle and all of those things that you'd hope to build in. So I think we'll have to have a conversation and put it up. I don't, when it keeps rising, I'm like not sure what to do it to, and I don't want festivals to kind of, oh, it's that tension, isn't it? You don't want to put people off, but you also need to say what clearly is.
Exactly.
But we've also done like lots of booking in advance for trains, but then we might be impacted by the strike. So we might end up picking everyone up anywhere. You know, it's that I feel like travel chaos not there. But yeah, I mean, it would probably be 55p a mile we talked about. Andrew, would festivals swallow that, do you think?
It's probably in line with inflation. That sounds as if that's in the realms of negotiable, I think. Yeah.
It's something I might try and keep a bit more of an eye on from here as well, actually, just so that we got a little bit of consensus on that.
I think for our membership, Angus, it would be it's a really big deal for lots of us.
Absolutely. And the nightmare of the advanced booking, when you kind of go, but hang on, I don't know what if I got caught out in Dorchester or something. I was like, oh, I'm stuck here in a hotel room for 3 hours waiting for a train because I had to book in advance. Joy. Okay, some top tips. It's going to be summary of what we said. Andrew, what have you got to share?
I would just reiterate, talk to us. And actually, you'll find that different people, I know it's a nightmare because I also see it from the other perspective, also making work and touring work as well. But for example, I'm someone who operates best if people phone me up. So you might find a phone call is actually more effective than sending emails because we get so many emails. So actually having a 15-minute chat with someone can actually do so much more often and be much more time effective. And it's just nice to talk to the people and get to know each other. So talk to us in advance is what I would say. Check the venue, definitely check the venue, and just be really explicit about what your equipment and support needs are, and just be really clear about all of that in advance. That's
super useful. Thank you. Lorna, what are you going to share with us?
And my top tip, well, we'll look at, travel cost is really important. So look at that in advance if you can. Social media, just remember to keep it in your work plan for the day, or if you do such a thing as a work plan, it's so beneficial. And, let's keep sharing the hell out of each other's work if we can as well. And then thirdly, it's well-being, protecting yourself, taking time. It might feel it's impossible because we're freelancers and it's precarious, right? But actually, we are back to a little bit more of normality-ish. And I just think if you fall apart, then everything else will as well. And then you don't have a business at all. So I've done some CPD this year. I did a course with Total Theatre magazine. Like I've just done some other stuff that nourishes me as an artist, because after the last 2 years of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy work, heavy work emotionally as well as probably some heavy lifting too, taking care of ourselves is so important. And if we can't take care of ourselves, then we don't take care of our cast or our companies or our work. So look after yourselves.
I think that's been a big thing this year is everyone saying, because we're so desperate to get back out and prove that we can get back out, say yes to everything, and kind of then looking at the schedule. Even David and I are doing that, going, oh my God, our calendar is looking very full, because we're trying to make up, in my head, I'm trying to make up for 3 years work in 1 year. That's what my psyche is. And it's, and then you go, oh, is that deliverable?
But then a lot of us haven't stopped. Certainly last year in the outdoor art sector, we were busier than anyone else indoors.
Indeed.
and we were changing things on the hoof with COVID legislation. So we had so much internal calculation we were doing. We were working harder than we've ever done last year, making sure that I didn't burn out this year. I've kind of had June off. So it's just, well, not off. I'm still doing loads of things, but I haven't really toured this month because I've got a gig on Saturday. But apart from that, I needed some time because we made new commissions, new work, the energy in that. I'm just noticing it more. Maybe as I age, it's part of it too. But I do think this is a COVID hangover thing. So yeah, just be aware of it for yourselves.
One of my little, I made some notes in advance of today about sort of before, during, after COVID. Okay, I know we're not after, but one of the notes I have here is so we sort of take 2019 as before. In terms of outdoor arts, nice to have before. During, only option. After, it's where audiences are at.
That's a good summary of our raison d'etre. Thank you. Great. I was going to add just my kind of tips were always in terms of the info sharing, which we've talked about quite a lot. But I think it's that thing of both ways. And I always was very impressed seeing companies, you know, if we were having to go, hang on a minute, we've got a problem here, was seeing companies who would share information kind of both ways with all of their team immediately, so that actually the solution would often come from somewhere you weren't expecting it. I just think that, again, we're talking about the broadness, but I think I was always impressed with companies that you wouldn't just deal with the technical manager, you deal with everybody. And I thought that was a very healthy way to be. My favorite thing is always managing expectations and being super clear about what you're going to get as a receiving festival. And then the third one in that would be about pre-negotiation rather than renegotiation. It was often very interesting for companies, I would find, that would come in and say, well, if it's raining, we can do this, but we can't do that. And if we can do it in another venue, this is what it will look like. And that kind of pre-negotiation of changing, I'm talking only about the weather there, but also I think you were talking about saying, well, actually, we haven't got capacity for that with the cast of 6, but we've got this company of 2. But actually that can be part of your negotiation, especially with COVID, saying, well, actually, if it goes wrong, we can still deliver you something for your festival and it will look a little bit like this. But I think more than ever being upfront about that. But I used to really quite enjoy that, of going, well, actually, it sounds like I'll get something in a foyer if it's pissing down, or nothing at all. And I think actually we should just remember that COVID isn't over. And I think just keeping those things as part of your kind of risk assessments and what you're offering is kind of really important. And I think also for audiences to know that. I was a big advocate of putting your COVID risk assessments on your websites last couple of years, just so that people could be really clear about how things were going to work. And I think that's just generally quite good practice. Great, that's been super useful. Finally, Andrew, you've got a festival coming up in very shortly. What are you to look forward to there? What are you really looking forward to seeing?
Yeah, we're coming up. There we go.
Hey, there we are.
Hey, 1st to the 3rd of July. So I'm looking forward to being back in the city for the first time in 3 years. And this is the other thing I was reflecting on today. There's been a lot of subtle shifts because so many things have changed for our partner organizations as well. So we've kind of almost have to reset the template this year. So we're back in the city on the Friday and the Saturday. We're going to open with a big carnival with hundreds of young people on the Friday. So that's going to be joyous just to be doing that again, have that life back in the city. Fidget Feet I've mentioned, but also I'm really chuffed that, you know, artists who we've had dialogue with now for 3-4 years and everything's been delayed and delayed and delayed, where some of them are now going to be here. Yay, really excited for them. And you know, we've kept those conversations going and also bringing some new people in and, you know, supporting a lot of emerging work as well. So yeah, just praying for the weather to hang on. And yeah, we're also doing a slightly different format on the Sunday this year. And again, you might find this has shifted with quite a few festivals. Some of them are beginning to do hybrid, free and ticketed. So we're doing tickets on the Sunday this year, day tickets, a slightly different model. But yeah, let's fingers crossed people are going to turn out, come, stuff will happen, people have a good time.
Great, I'll be there. Lorna, what are you looking forward to?
Oh, I'm
Everything.
really looking forward to, I might not be able to announce it yet. Yeah, we're doing Geophonics somewhere I'm really excited about. And in London, I'm excited. It's Fraser Hooper at Hat Fair. So I'm excited about seeing Fraser Hooper at Hat Fair because he's one of my favourite, very old school, most accurate clowning you're ever going to see. He's extraordinary, Fraser. So I'm excited about seeing Fraser at Hat Fair.
Actually, I remember being at Hat Fair, and I can't remember what I was deeply stressed about, but I was deeply stressed about something. And sitting outside the cathedral, and Fraser was on, and I remember tweeting, Fraser Hooper in the sunshine at a festival, all is well in my world. And it's very much that. He's a great one, confidence.
Years ago, somebody, I think Stephanie from Hoodwink said he is the sort of, the outdoor artist in a way. It's very old school, but just extraordinary clowning. And I would just recommend just to see somebody that's incredibly skilled about this very pure form of busking and hatting. Make sure you see Fraser because he's extraordinary. But also we've got loads of things coming up, and I am seeing in the Solstice on Blackdown near the Hardy's Monument in Dorset on Tuesday morning at 4:30 in the morning. I start as the High Priestess of Pop with a disco druid, and I'm officiating the ceremony. So I'm really looking forward to that as a kind of little small lovely commission for the AOMB for Dorset.
Lovely, so much for June being your month off. Well done, you.
Oh, these are
I'm a High Priestess druid, disco druid. Brilliant. Great. I'm looking forward to. I really want to go. I'm going to Manchester today on Sunday, and it'd be really good to see that. Having had the rather weird Jubilee pageant, which was it was a great thing for the sector, but it was an odd event. I'm quite looking forward to seeing a parade in that sense that is, and also not in London. That'll be great, and it's one that's a real thing about city pride. It's about rather than. Yeah, that's what was strange about the Jubilee. Right, I'm just going to plug we've got a couple more of these. So the next one will be we're just calling it Making It Accessible. Again, some top tips on how to make your work accessible for deaf and disabled audiences, and also how you work with artists. So that will be next Thursday, and then the following one is called Making It Greener, where we'll just be looking at some easy ways. Interestingly, we've got the handlebars in there, so they haven't got the diesel price problem because they do it all on bicycles. But I think that brings its own challenges in terms of health and well-being. So those are coming up. Then also, we're just starting to announce our On the Road program. So we will be out and about hosting some more networking events. But our first coming up is if you're already in there going to Glastonbury on Thursday, the 23rd at 5 o'clock, we will be in the Circus and Theatre Green Room tent hosting an event. David and also Jojo from Bash Street and Alan from Surge will be looking after that event. And then we'll have those going right the way through till September. Various festivals, and then right now we've just announced almost all. We've got one more to announce. We've got 4 of our festival focuses, which are now all. We'll get the 5th out today, won't we? So the first one is Hat Fair. So you can apply for a subsidised place to come to Hat Fair, and that's a kind of curated visit to a festival for probably 5 or 6 people, and we will then provide professional development program alongside that. We're also doing one at Tunbridge Wells Mellor. You can apply for that. We're also doing, oh gosh, I'm blanking now because I haven't got it on my screen. Hull Freedom Festival, which is a great one. We're kind of we're pointing producers and programmers towards Hat Fair. Hull, we're pushing artists towards, because it's really interesting seeing a program with commissioned work based on a theme such as freedom, because it's a festival that came out of a celebration for William Wilberforce and the abolition of slavery. And then we're also doing, what's our 4th? Stockton International Riverside Festival with a great big opening show, and we booked 3 rather strange looking Airbnbs for that, so it could be quite a comedy visit anyway. And then the other one we'll be doing, we haven't put it up quite yet for application, is Greenwich and Docklands, because that's a great one to see a lot of work, and that works for artists and for producers too. So those are all available on the website to apply now. Please, if you're not a member, please join Outdoor Arts UK. We're good and cheap and a friendly organisation to be a member of. And then you get on the membership directory. So when I get those phone calls saying, who do I book at the last minute? Or I need a producer to advise me, we send them to the directory. So if you ain't on, you ain't on. That's not true at all. We recommend people who aren't there at all. And also we have a one-to-ones booking program. If you'd like a bit of time with me or a member of the team or David to talk about finance or me to talk about general programming, you can again book those online. They're a priority for members, but anybody could do that. That's what we've got to offer. Look at that, bang on 11:59. Thank you all for coming. Good to see you all. Thank you to Andrew. Thank you to Lorna for sharing so much with us. Look forward to seeing you out there. Thank you, David, for putting this together. And I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good rest of your week. If you're going out to see shows, fingers crossed for the weather. It's looking good. Adios, amigos.